It was supposed to be a joke. That's all it ever was with Travis, stupid dares, dumb bets, and us going along with it because, well, that's what friends do when you're 17 and think nothing bad can actually happen to you. And that's how we ended up driving toward Briar Hill Cemetery on a Saturday night, packed into Travis's rusted-out Jeep with a cooler full of cheap beer and enough false confidence to get us through anything. Me, Travis, Liam, and Sadie, who, if I'm being honest, I only came for in the first place. Come on, James. It's just a graveyard. What's the worst that could happen? That's what Travis said as we passed the old rusted gate with the broken sign hanging half off the hinges. The words Briar Hill Cemetery, EST 1904, were barely readable in the dark. We parked the Jeep just off the road, cutting the headlights so no one would see us. The moon was low and heavy, throwing long shadows across the overgrown grass. The whole place felt wrong. Not like a movie wrong, no fog, no spooky howls in the distance. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that presses in on your ears until you hear every breath, every shift in the dirt under your shoes. All right, here's the deal, Travis said, grinning like the idiot he was. We each split up and take a lap around the cemetery. First one to chicken out has to shotgun 3 beers back to back. Split up. Sadie's voice was flat. You're joking, right? What scared? Travis shot back. She rolled her eyes but didn't answer. We split up anyway. Because that's what you do when you're too stupid to back out. The open grave. It didn't take long for things to go wrong. I was maybe 5 minutes into my lap, picking my way between crumbling headstones and trying not to trip over the tangled weeds when the smell hit me. Rot. Wet earth mixed with something thicker. Metallic. I followed it because I'm an idiot and that's what idiots do. And that's when I saw it. An open grave. At first, I thought it was just a maintenance thing, maybe someone was preparing for a funeral the next day. But the edges of the hole weren't clean. The dirt was scattered like someone had been digging in a hurry. I stepped closer. That's when I saw the body. It wasn't fresh. The skin was sunken and stretched tight across the bones, patches of hair still clinging to the scalp. The worst part? The eyes were open, staring straight at the sky. Like whoever this person had died looking up, waiting for someone to come. I stumbled back so fast I nearly fell into a headstone. My breath clawed its way out of my throat in ragged gasps. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Not mine. Not fast, not loud, just slow. Deliberate. Coming from the other side of the grave. I spun around, flashlight cutting through the dark. But there was nothing there. The footsteps stopped. Everyone finds something. When I got back to the Jeep, the others were already there, except Travis. Liam looked like he'd seen a ghost, face pale under the moonlight. Where's Travis? I asked. Sadie's arms were crossed, her voice low and tight. He's still out there. Probably trying to scare us. What happened to you guys? Liam swallowed hard. Found a broken phone near the fence. Screen smashed to hell. So, it was still on. That's when I noticed Sadie's hands were shaking. You okay? I asked. She didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, I found a jacket. Buried under some leaves. Travis's? No, she whispered. It was covered in blood. The missing piece. We waited another 15 minutes. No sign of Travis. No texts. No calls. Liam tried calling him, but it went straight to voicemail. The air felt heavier now, like the night itself was pressing in around us. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I'm going back for him. Sadie grabbed my arm. What if he's messing with us? Then I'll punch him in the face for being a jackass. But if he's not? No one had an answer for that. The phone in the dirt. I retraced my steps toward where I'd found the open grave, flashlight slicing through the dark. That's when I saw it, a phone lying face down in the dirt. I picked it up, heart crawling into my throat. The screen was cracked but still on. It was Travis's phone. And on the screen, a video was still recording. I pressed play. The footage was shaky, just the beam of his flashlight bouncing off headstones as he ran. Heavy breathing filled the speakers. Dude, this isn't funny, who's there? A pause. Then a whisper, so faint I almost missed it. Leave. The video ended in static. I turned around. That's when I realized the open grave was gone. The dirt was smooth, undisturbed. Like no one had ever been buried there at all. The grave was gone. I stood there, frozen, staring at a patch of dirt so smooth it could have been untouched for decades. No loose earth. No scattered dirt. No sign that anything or anyone had been there at all. But I knew what I saw. I knew what was in that hole. The body. The open eyes. The smell of rot. And now there was nothing. Except for Travis's phone in my hand, still warm from recording something neither of us wanted to remember. I turned around and nearly slammed into Liam. Jesus, man, I shoved him back, my pulse jackhammering in my throat. Don't sneak up on me. You didn't answer your phone, he muttered, glancing nervously over his shoulder. You were gone too long. Did you find him? I held up the phone. The cracked screen was still flickering. No, but I found this. Where's the grave? His voice was thin now, high and tight around the edges. It's gone. We didn't speak on the walk back to the Jeep. The silence wasn't comfortable anymore. It felt like the whole cemetery was listening. The missing name. When we got back, Sadie was pacing in tight circles, chewing on her thumbnail. Any sign of Travis? She asked before I could say a word. I shook my head. I found his phone by where I saw the grave. You saw a grave? Her eyes narrowed, searching my face for the punchline she wanted me to say was coming. I just nodded. James, this isn't funny anymore. I'm not joking. My voice cracked, louder than I meant it to be. Liam held up his hands. Guys, just listen. We did. And that's when I realized the silence wasn't just inside the cemetery anymore. The wind had stopped. No rustling trees. No insects. Nothing. We need to go, Sadie whispered, wrapping her arms around herself. Now. I was already halfway into the driver's seat when Liam said, wait. Look. He was pointing at the gate. At the old rusted sign we passed on the way in. Briar Hill Cemetery, EST, 1904. Except now. There were new letters beneath the name. A list. Names. The metal was so rusted it was barely visible, but I could make out a few under the moonlight. Daniel Merrick, 1968. Aaron Palmer, 1982. Travis Granger, 2023. No. No, no, no. Sadie's voice broke completely. That's not possible. That's not possible. I blinked hard, wiping sweat from my forehead, my pulse roaring in my ears. But the name was still there. Travis Granger, 2023. The year wasn't even over yet. The lights in the trees. We weren't alone anymore. Liam was the first to see them, small lights blinking between the trees at the edge of the cemetery. Like tiny lanterns swaying in the wind, except there was no wind. And the lights were moving closer. Get in the car. I don't remember saying it. I just remember driving. The wheels spun against the dirt road, the headlights cutting across the tombstones as we tore down the narrow path back toward the main road. But the faster I drove, the closer the lights seemed to get. Like they were following us. No, chasing us. Sadie was crying quietly in the back seat. Liam wouldn't stop staring over his shoulder. They're not stopping, James. His voice was barely audible. I didn't want to look. But I did. And what I saw wasn't lights. It was eyes. Dozens of them. Back to where it started. We didn't stop driving until we hit the gas station on the edge of town. The bright neon lights felt like a shield. A barrier between us and whatever had followed us out of Briar Hill. Liam was shaking so badly he couldn't get his seatbelt off. Sadie wouldn't look at me, her hands clenched into fists so tight her nails were drawing blood from her palms. What the hell is happening? She whispered. I didn't have an answer. But then I remembered the phone. Travis's phone. I unlocked it with his passcode. I'd known it since middle school. There were new photos in his gallery. Ones he didn't take. The last photo. The first picture was of dirt. A lot of dirt with something pale sticking out of it, fingers. The second photo showed a blurry shape crouched in the shadows near a headstone, too dark to make out clearly. The third was worse. It was a photo of us. Me, Liam, and Sadie. Standing next to the Jeep. It had been taken just minutes earlier. But none of us had our phones out. The call from Travis. That's when the phone rang. Incoming call, Travis. The three of us froze. I answered. Travis? Static. Then breathing. Slow, ragged, like someone gasping for air underground. Then a voice, his voice. You should have left me there. I let the phone slip from my hand. The call ended on its own, the screen flickering as if the battery had drained all at once. Liam and Sadie just stared at me. No one spoke. There wasn't anything to say. We all heard Travis's voice. We all heard what he said. You should have left me there. I wanted to believe it was a prank. A sick joke. Maybe Travis had run off, hiding somewhere in the trees with a second phone and a plan to scare the hell out of us. But the blood on Sadie's hands from gripping her nails too hard, the way Liam wouldn't stop shaking, and the cold sweat soaking my own back told me something worse. Travis wasn't playing. And we couldn't just drive away from this. We stayed at the gas station for over an hour. None of us said much, just sat there in the harsh fluorescent light, waiting for the weight in our chests to lift. It didn't. Liam was the first to break the silence. The names on the gate. I nodded, the thought gnawing at me since we'd left. They weren't random. Sadie's voice was barely a whisper. What if the names weren't of the dead? I met her eyes. She was pale, dark circles carved under her eyelids. What do you mean? She swallowed hard. What if they are the people who never made it out? The list had Travis's name. Travis Granger, 2023. If Sadie was right and that list was some kind of marker, that meant his name being there wasn't just a memorial. It was a warning. The gas station's silence was shattered by Liam's phone buzzing against the countertop. One new message. No caller ID. He hesitated before opening it. I could see the sweat beading on his forehead. It's from Travis's number. I leaned over his shoulder as he unlocked it. The text was simple. Come back before sunrise. Attached was a photo. Blurry, dark, taken underground. But I could make out two things. A pair of shoes. And fingers curled in the dirt. Travis's shoes. No. Sadie's voice cracked. I'm not going back there. We call the cops. We tell them everything. I shook my head slowly, the dread in my stomach pooling like lead. The cops won't believe us. What are we going to say? Our friend disappeared in a cemetery and now his ghost is texting us. Liam wiped his face with the sleeve of his hoodie, breathing hard. He's alive. That means there's still time. The words sounded hollow. I didn't believe them. Not really. But I had to try. We were back on the road 10 minutes later. The closer we got to Briar Hill, the quieter it became. No cars. No wind. Just the hum of the tires on asphalt and the hollow ache in my chest. The cemetery gate was open when we arrived. We hadn't left it like that. The list of names was still there, but now there was a new one at the bottom. Liam Harper, 2023. Liam didn't see it at first. I did. I didn't tell him. We parked closer this time, leaving the Jeep's headlights aimed at the trees like weak spotlights trying to hold the darkness back. Sadie stayed by the car, too scared to move. I didn't blame her. Let's find him and get the hell out of here, Liam said, his voice shaking. I nodded, gripping the flashlight tighter. Stick close. We're not splitting up again. We made our way back toward where I'd found the open grave earlier. Except this time, there was a hole. Freshly dug, with dirt piled high around the edges. The smell hit me first. That sharp, metallic stench of blood mixed with rotting earth. I leaned over the edge with the flashlight, heart pounding so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. And there he was. Travis. But he wasn't dead. His chest rose and fell, shallow but steady. His skin was slick with sweat and his clothes were torn and caked with mud. Liam, he's alive. I shouted, already climbing into the hole. Liam scrambled to help me pull him out, his hands shaking so bad I thought he might drop him. Travis, wake up, man. I slapped his face gently, trying to get any sign of life beyond that weak breath. Nothing. But his eyes, half-lidded and glassy, locked onto mine for a split second. We need to leave now, Liam hissed, glancing toward the trees. We're not alone. That's when I saw it. A figure standing just beyond the line of gravestones. Tall, unmoving. The outline of a face was barely visible in the moonlight, hollow and sunken like the skin had stretched too tightly across the bones. I couldn't breathe. It wasn't watching Travis. It was watching me. James? Sadie's voice came from behind us, low and shaking. I turned around. She was holding up her phone, face pale as snow. A new message. Too late. Attached was another photo. A close-up of the gate. The list of names. Now there were 4. James Holloway, 2023. The cold air burned my throat as I stared at my name carved into the rusted gate. James Holloway, 2023. I didn't know how it had gotten there, but deep down something told me it had always been waiting for me. Liam was already hauling Travis toward the car, his voice hoarse from shouting. Sadie stood by the Jeep, gripping the door with white-knuckled hands, her eyes locked on something behind me. I didn't dare look back. I didn't need to. I could feel it, the figure standing just beyond the tree line. Watching. Waiting. I grabbed Travis's other arm and we dragged him across the uneven ground, feet sinking into the soft dirt. Every second stretched thin, like the night itself was holding its breath, waiting for us to screw up. We threw Travis into the back seat, his breathing shallow but steady. I slammed the door shut and dove into the driver's seat, shoving the keys into the ignition with shaking hands. The engine sputtered. Then died. No. Come on. Not now. I turned the key again, nothing but a weak click. Liam swore under his breath and turned toward the road. His voice dropped to a whisper. We're not alone, James. I followed his gaze. The figure was closer now, standing on the edge of the cemetery path. I couldn't see its face, but every nerve in my body screamed that it was looking straight at me. The headlights flickered once, then went out completely. It's the list, Sadie whispered from the back seat. It's not just names. It's a countdown. I swallowed hard, trying to focus on anything but the icy dread clawing its way up my spine. We're not dying here. Liam grabbed my arm. We might already be dead. Shut up. I hissed, turning the key again. This time, the engine roared to life. I didn't wait for the headlights to come back on. I hit the gas and tore down the dirt road, the wheels kicking up thick clouds of dust behind us. The rearview mirror showed nothing but darkness. No headlights. No eyes in the trees. But I knew it wasn't over. Not even close. We didn't speak the entire drive back into town. Travis stayed unconscious in the back seat, his breathing slow and uneven. Every so often his lips would twitch like he was trying to say something but couldn't force the words out. I pulled into the first open parking lot I could find, an old grocery store with flickering lights and empty aisles visible through the windows. We sat there, listening to the engine tick as it cooled down. It followed us, Sadie finally said, her voice barely a whisper. You don't know that, Liam muttered, but his eyes stayed glued to the rearview mirror. I checked my phone for the first time since we left the cemetery. No new messages. No missed calls. And no signal. This doesn't make sense, I muttered. Travis didn't just disappear. The grave didn't just vanish. Someone had to do this. But who? Liam snapped, his voice raw with fear. You saw what was out there, James. That thing that wasn't human. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because part of me was starting to wonder if he was right. Sadie's phone buzzed in the silence. We all jumped. She held the screen up, her face going pale. New message from an unknown number. It's not over. Attached was a new photo. The list on the gate. There were now 5 names. Sadie Kerr, 2023. Liam slammed his fist into the dashboard. We should have never gone there. We should have never left him alone. It's not our fault, Sadie shot back, though her voice cracked as she said it. We didn't know. It doesn't matter, I muttered. The list's not finished. I scrolled through the photos on Travis's phone, desperate for anything that could explain what was happening. That's when I noticed something. The first photo, the one of the grave, had a timestamp. 2:37 a.m. The exact same time I'd found the open grave. It's a countdown, I realized, my voice shaking. Every time the clock hits 2:37, someone else gets at it. Liam stared at me like I'd lost my mind. That's in, he checked his phone. 14 minutes. I turned the keys in the ignition, speeding out of the parking lot with a screech of tires. Where are we going? Sadie asked. Back to Briar Hill. Are you insane? Liam shouted. We barely made it out the first time. If we don't end this now, we're all going to end up on that list. The headlights cut through the empty streets, and for a second I thought I saw something in the reflection of a storefront window, a shadow standing in the middle of the road. But when I turned to look, there was nothing. We reached the cemetery with 2 minutes to spare. The gate was wide open again, the rusted hinges creaking in the windless air. I killed the engine, and for a second none of us moved. We need to finish the list before it finishes us, I said, stepping out of the car. Liam and Sadie followed without a word, the fear in their eyes replaced by cold resignation. We made our way back to the spot where Travis had been buried. The hole was gone. In its place was a new headstone. Freshly carved. Travis Granger, 2006 to 2023. He's dead, Liam choked out. We were too late. No. I shook my head, trying to hold on to any shred of hope. This place doesn't kill people the normal way. Then what the hell does it want? Sadie demanded, tears streaming down her face. That's when I noticed the ground beneath the headstone shifting. The dirt moved. A hand broke through the surface, Travis's hand. But it wasn't reaching for help. It was pulling. Liam grabbed my arm, dragging me back as the ground split open beneath the stone. The dirt churned like something underneath was alive, clawing its way out. A voice, Travis's voice, whispered from the darkness. It won't stop until the list is finished. The earth swallowed his hand whole. I turned towards Sadie and Liam, my chest tightening like a vice. If this is a list, we have to break it before sunrise. Or none of us are leaving. Liam's face twisted with realization. How do we do that? We end it where it started. I turned toward the gate. Toward my name at the bottom of the list. The ground swallowed Travis's hand whole, leaving nothing but smooth dirt and that cold, hollow silence pressing in around us. Liam was shaking so badly I could hear his teeth clattering. Sadie didn't cry this time. She just stared at the gravestone, her breath sharp and shallow. It won't stop until the list is finished. Travis's voice echoed in my head like a warning, or maybe a promise. I turned toward the gate, the rusted letters gleaming under the weak light of the moon. The names were still there, carved deep into the old metal. Travis Granger, 2023. Liam Harper, 2023. Sadie Kerr, 2023. James Holloway, 2023. The space beneath my name was still empty. The list wasn't finished. We end this now. My voice didn't feel like my own anymore, flat and distant, like it belonged to someone who already knew how this would end. What are you talking about? Sadie asked, her voice hoarse and raw. It's us. We're the list. It won't stop until all our names mean something. You mean until we're dead? Liam spat, backing away from the gravesite. No way. We're leaving, James. Now. I shook my head slowly. You saw what happened to Travis. You think we can outrun this? Sadie grabbed my arm. There has to be another way. Maybe we can break the stone or destroy the gate. But I knew the truth. This wasn't about the cemetery. It was about us. The ground beneath Travis's headstone shifted again. But this time it wasn't just dirt moving. A face. His face. But it wasn't really Travis anymore. His skin was stretched too thin across his bones, eyes sunken and hollow like the dirt had drained everything human out of him. The worst part was the smile. That same grin he always had before pulling a stupid prank, except now it was empty. You should have stayed, James, it whispered from underground, voice thick with dirt. We could have all stayed together. Liam screamed and bolted for the gate. But the second his foot hit the path, the ground split open. A hand shot out of the dirt and latched onto his ankle. Not Travis's hand. Someone else's, cold, gray, and impossibly strong. Liam didn't even have time to react before the ground swallowed him whole. Gone. Just like that. No. Sadie's scream was so raw it hurt to hear. I grabbed her wrist, pulling her away from the collapsing earth. We have to end it now. Her eyes were wild, filled with panic and horror. How? There's no ending this. I didn't let her finish. Because deep down I knew what the cemetery wanted. It wasn't death. It was remembrance. Say his name, I whispered. Sadie blinked through her tears. What? Travis. Say his name. She stared at me like I'd lost my mind. But I knew it. I felt it. The list wasn't a curse. It was a ritual. A memory carved into rusted metal and cold earth meant to trap us in this endless loop until we finished what had started. If we say their names, we end the list. We acknowledge what happened. Sadie's lip trembled. That's insane. You have a better idea? The ground groaned beneath us like something enormous was shifting underneath the cemetery. The list was almost finished. I turned toward the grave, swallowing the bile rising in my throat. Travis Granger. The wind picked up, fast and violent, whipping the trees until they groaned in protest. Liam Harper, Sadie whispered, her voice breaking halfway through. The air grew cold enough to burn. The earth beneath our feet went still. One name left. My name. James Holloway. I barely managed to choke it out, but when I did, everything stopped. The wind died. The dirt settled. The graves stood still. The cemetery was quiet. Not empty, but calm. For the first time since we arrived, I felt the weight lift. We turned toward the gate. The list was gone. We didn't speak as we stumbled back to the car. I drove without thinking, the endless black road stretching in front of us like a promise that we could finally leave this nightmare behind. Sadie stared out the window, silent tears cutting trails down her face. We're going to be okay, I whispered, gripping the wheel tighter than I needed to. We ended it. 2 weeks later. Travis's funeral was closed casket. His family didn't ask for details and I didn't offer any. Liam's body was never found. The town called it an accident. I let them believe that. I didn't hear from Sadie after the funeral. She stopped returning my texts. Stopped answering my calls. Maybe she was trying to forget. Maybe she couldn't. Last night, I found something carved into the doorframe of my bedroom. I didn't do it. I don't know how it got there. But it was fresh. The letters were jagged, uneven, like someone had carved them in the dark. James Holloway, 2023. And just now, as I'm writing this, my phone lit up with a new message. No caller ID. No words. Just a photo. The gate of Briar Hill. With one name left on the list. Sadie Kerr, 2023.